Now we will discuss about the information and the empire, that how information used to be circulated from the center to the state and up in different provinces, that we will be discussing over here. So information and the empire. The keeping of exact and detailed record was a major concern of the Mughal administration, means everything was kept in a detailed record. The Mir Bakshi supervised the corps of court writers, that is called Waqianavis, who used to record the actual happening of that time, and it was recorded according to the chronological order, and it was also presented in the court. So this kind of documentations used to be there. News reports and important official documents traveled across the length and breadth of the regions under the Mughal rule by the imperial post. So there was a well developed postal network through which the news from the center used to spread through various provincial centers located in different parts of the empire. So there used to be circulation of news through the imperial post system, and round the clock 24 hours foot runners, that is called Kasid or Pathmar, carried paper rolled up in a bamboo container. So they used to take the letter in a bamboo container for its safety, and round the clock 24 hours they were in service, and they used to circulate the news from one part to another part. The emperor received report from even distant provincial capital within a few days, and it used to be very efficient. Within a few days the ruler used to get the information of different provincial centers located in different parts of the empire. Now the provincial administration. The division of functions established at the center was replicated in the provinces itself. Means what was the function used to be there in the center, the same kind of system was also there in the provinces. Where the ministers had their corresponding subordinate, they are called the Diwan, Bakshi and Sadar, as it used to be in the center like Diwane-Ala, Mir Bakshi and Sadr-Sudur. The same thing was also replicated in the provincial center, and they were known by the name of Diwan, Bakshi and Sadar. The head of the provincial administration was the governor. The governor, that was also known by the name of Subadar, means the head of the Suba or the state, who reported directly to the emperor, and he was directly subordinate to the emperor, and he was answerable to the emperor. The Sarkars were like a district into which each Suba, each state was divided, often overlapped with the jurisdiction of Faujdar, and there used to be a Faujdar who was deployed over there along with the heavy cavalry and musketeers, and he was responsible for the law and order in a particular district. The local administration was looked after at the level of Pargana, that is also called as the sub-district. Today it is also known as the Tehsil, by the three semi-hereditary officers. There used to be three officers, one after another. The highest officer was the Kanungo. He was the keeper of the revenue record, and it is still a post in the revenue department. The Chaudhry, he was also the in charge of revenue collection, and the Kaji, who used to do the judgment in a particular matter. So he was like a judge. Each department of the administration maintained a large force of clerks, accountants, auditors, messengers and other functionaries. Means there used to be a number of employees which used to work in each department, and they were technically qualified officials and functioning in accordance with the standardized rules which was laid down by the ruler, and the procedures were also followed, and they also used to generate the copious written orders and records so that proper documentation can be done. Persian was made the official language of administration. So official language of administration was the Persian language throughout the empire, but local languages were also used for the village accounts, like the accounts which were maintained by the panchayats. They can also make use of the local language as well. The relationship between the local landed magnate, that is also called as the Zamindar, and the representative of the Mughal emperor was sometimes marked by conflict over authority. So Zamindars used to be a powerful figure in the rural areas at that time. So generally there used to be a conflict between the representative of the Mughal emperor, who used to go there to collect the revenue, and the Zamindar. and this conflict was because of the share of the resources. The zamindars often succeeded in mobilizing peasant support against the state. In this way, zamindars were having an upper hand because he was the local inhabitant and he could easily mobilize the local population against the state. And in this way, zamindar was also a powerful figure and he was always have an upper hand upon the state officials. Now beyond the frontiers. Now what kind of relationship was there with the neighboring kings and the Mughal rulers? Writers of the chronicles list many high-sounding titles assumed by the Mughal emperor. As we know that the Mughal rulers used to assume the high-sounding title like the Shahanshah. They used to call themselves as the Shahanshah, means the king of kings. And Jahangir, and his actual name was the Salim. And Jahangir means the world seizure. Shah Jahan means the ruler of the world. So they seemed to be very powerful at that time, but still there were many challenges which were faced by these rulers also. Yet the same contemporary histories provide accounts of diplomatic relationship and conflict with the neighboring provincial political power. So the neighboring countries were also having some sort of conflict with these rulers. So we will discuss about those conflicts. Like first of all, we will discuss about the Safavid and the Kandhar. Kandhar, as you know, presently lies in Afghanistan, and Safavid rulers used to be the ruling dynasty of Iran. A constant aim of Mughal polity was to ward off the potential danger by controlling the strategic outposts, notably Kabul and Kandhar. So Kabul and Kandhar, they used to be in the northwestern part of India. Right now they both are in Afghanistan, and from there is always a danger towards the Indian subcontinent because all the invaders used to come through that passage. And there is a pass that is also called as the Khyber Pass. So Khyber Pass was the passage from where a lot of danger used to be inflicted upon the Indian subcontinent. In the winter of 1622, a Persian army besieged Kandhar. Persian army took control of the Kandhar in 1622, and at that time the Mughal army which was stationed there, that was ill prepared, and consequently they got a defeat at the hand of the Safavids. Thereafter Kandhar went into the control of the Safavids. Now the Ottoman pilgrimage and the trade. What kind of relationship was there between the Mughal ruler and the Ottoman Turkey? The Mughal emperor usually combined religion and commerce by exporting valuable merchandise to Aden and Mocha. So these used to be the important port of Red Sea. So there used to be trade between European country and Arabian country and India. So this trade used to be at the peak at the time of the Hajj. So during the Hajj there used to be a lot of trade and a lot of profit used to be earned by the Mughal state. But that profit was given to the shrines of Makkah so that more facilities could be provided to the pilgrims who used to visit there. But when Aurangzeb discovered the case of misappropriation of the funds sent to Arabia, he favored that it should be distributed in India only. Means the money which was given by the Mughal ruler for the maintenance of this central shrine, that was Kaaba, to the Arabian people, that was misappropriated, that was misused. So Aurangzeb stopped giving this kind of fund to the people of Arabia, and he said that India was also a home of the god, so it should be spent in India itself. So this finance was stopped by Aurangzeb. Now Jesuit at the Mughal court. This was the time when European power started coming in India, and along with the European power, Jesuit missionary also started coming in India, and they started spreading their own religion in India. Following the discovery of direct sea route to India at the beginning of the 15th century, at the end of the 15th century, Portuguese merchandise established a network of trading stations in coastal cities of India. The Portuguese king was also interested in propagation of Christianity with the help of the missionaries. So the ruler of Portugal wanted to spread Christianity in India, so he sent the Jesuit missionary in India. The Christian mission to India during the 16th century were part of the process of trade and empire building also. Akbar was curious. So Akbar was a ruler who was of secular kind of nature, and he wanted to know about the Christianity. So he used to call the Jesuit mission in his court. The first Jesuit mission which came into his court, that was in 1580, and it stayed for 2 years at Fatehpur Sikri, and there used to be the debate between the ulema and these Christian missionaries, and in this way he used to come to know about the good qualities of the Christian religion. Now you can see that this is a scene of the Nobat Khana, where the debates used to take place between the ulema and the Christian missionaries, as well as there used to be some other spiritual leaders of different religion. So there used to be a debate, and he used to know about the good thing of every religion. At public assemblies, the Jesuits were assigned place in close proximity to the Akbar's throne. You can see that this is the Akbar, and this is the person or the envoy who came to the court of the Akbar, and he was a Jesuit. So they were given the place very close to the Akbar, and they also used to accompany him in different campaigns, and they also tutored their children. The Mughal rulers' children were also tutored by these people who came as the Jesuit missionaries, and were often companion of his leisure hours. During the leisure hours they were also called, and Akbar used to learn about the Christian religion from them. And 2 more missions were sent to India to spread the Christianity in India, and they were also welcomed by the Akbar. Now questioning the formal religion, what could be the official religion of the state? Akbar's quest for religious knowledge led to interfaith debate in the Ibadat Khana. So in Ibadat Khana there used to be the debate, as I have shown you in the last slide also, and this used to be at Fatehpur Sikri, and it used to be between the learned Muslims, Hindus, Jainas, Parsis, as well as the Christians. So all the religious leaders of different religions used to debate over there, and Akbar's religious view matured as he queried scholars of different religions. He wanted to know about different religions, and he used to select the good thing from each and every religion, and in this way he also introduced a new religion of his own, and that was known as the Deen-e-Ilahi. His interaction with the various religious theologians had convinced him that despite of their difference, all religions had several good practices. Means different religions are having different good practices, and that must be copied in our daily life, which he sought to combine into a new religion. And he introduced a new religion while merging all these good qualities from different religions, and that religion was called as the Deen-e-Ilahi. Here it is a remark which was made by the person who came with the Jesuit missionaries. Montserrat remarked that the king cared little, that in allowing everyone to follow his religion, he was in reality violating all. It says that Akbar did not believe in any religion. He used to violate each and every religion. It means this shows that he was of secular in nature.